taking a PDA interface almost and then putting that on paper, because most of the space here is just empty to write stuff on it, and here we have a little bit of text. So what we actually did is we transformed the printed media that evolved over a few thousand years, and we come up with something that looks almost like a printed PDA, and we said this is not good at all. I mean, this is completely the wrong way, and that's why we came then to the first design where we said, it should just look like the normal booklet. I mean, there should be no difference. I mean, it's a paper document, and if you have such a pen, you can do some interactions. So we had this version here where you have text. You have, for example, when the show takes place, the title of a show, and the idea was that you could just use your pen, and if you click, for example, on the time, it would give you additional information about that. If you clicked on the title or the performer, it would give you additional information about that. So we built that system, and we thought this is really cool. We went to Edinburgh to test it for a week, and it didn't work at all. So it was really, you could tell people 10 times, look, this is now interactive paper. You can use this pen and you can really click on the text and it will do some crazy stuff for you. But they really couldn't, or most people were not able to use the system. And I think, I mean, I don't know the answer why, but maybe it's a bit related to things we have seen on the internet, because when we started with HTML, it was there were clear conventions. We knew there is something underlined in blue. This is a hyperlink, I can click on that. Whereas nowadays you have this kind of weird flash stuff and everybody knows there must be a link somewhere, I can click somewhere and you go there. And maybe it's the same with these paper interfaces. Maybe in 10 years something like that would work, because people know, oh yeah, that's just an interactive paper interface, I can interact with it. But it didn't work in 2004. So what we did then for the year after, we decided to use pictograms. They have all the same size, the same color, and you can then click on these pictograms and drive some interaction by that. And this new approach, even if it doesn't look that nice, because you have now all these additional pictograms on the page, that worked perfectly. So people really, if you told them, you can click on the blue stuff, they knew, okay, I can click on the blue stuff, and they started to use the interface. So that's just one example. I mean, I think suddenly if you try to do it for another application, you really have to be careful and not just trying to hide actually these interactive regions. I mean, it's nice to have something that looks almost like the original thing, but then you have to think, will people really know that there is this interactivity on the page? I mean, somehow you have to give them a hint that there is additional content on the page. Another thing is the interaction design, and yeah, most of you, I'm pretty sure, also faced some problems there when designing augmented paper solutions. So one thing is, for example, the lack of these modal dialogues that we have in a digital system. So that was something we have seen with the festival. I mean, if you have a computer and the user has to do something, you can have a modal dialogue, and he can either put in all the data and say okay, or he can cancel the whole thing. But this is not, you cannot do that on paper. I mean, the user can just do whatever they want. I mean, they can, and that happens here quite often. So they maybe start to do something like a ticket booking, which includes multiple steps, and at some point they just decide to do something else or to stop it. And the question is then, how do you deal with that? I mean, you need then some timeouts, or you have to be aware that one transaction is somehow aborted by doing something, a new operation and so on. So this really makes it very complicated to deal with the interface there. Of course, I think in the future what's important there is also that we have not just one input device. I mean, we have pen. Even for the festival, for the first version, we already had pen interaction, pen input, plus voice recognition to drive the system. And we also thought, yeah, this is very cool if you give them the choice, but also that was a problem again. So it was better then in the second year just to use the pen input for this specific application. But I think, again, in general, it's nice if you can use different modalities. And maybe it's, again, up to the user, up to the given context that they would like to switch from pen input to voice input or whatever. And the important thing is that you design it in a way that it's that you make that possible. So these findings, to say what I mean here, I have to explain another thing that we also just found by designing this festival booklet that was also interesting. So here you can see the booklet. You have actually here the dates when the show takes place, but there are also other documents that have again dates in there. Now if you have to do a booking, at some point the system tells you select the date when you would like, for which show you would like to do the booking. Now we thought, yeah, of course they would just click on the date that is close to the booking thing, but of course users, they just look for a date and they can choose the date in any document. This is again quite interesting, I think, because if you think about graphical user interfaces, it's interesting to see why we cannot do it there. I mean, if you have Outlook and maybe another application that also has some dates there, why can you not be flexible to choose the date from any application you want? So maybe that's even something where we could try to redesign or rethink how we build actually the application and graphical user interfaces on desktop computers. Another 2 or 3 minutes?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I said there is also a lot of things going on with the hardware and with the material sciences. I have here just 2 examples that I found pretty interesting. So of course paper is great, but as we've seen today it has also some limitations. Like for example, if you would like to give some feedback to the user, it's not that easy. I mean, either you have to put it on an interactive table and use some projection and then you get the feedback, or otherwise it's really not easy to do that. So for example, for the festival, I told you could get additional information, but how? So we decided not to use a PDA, because then it would be pretty strange that you have your booklet, you have a pen, and where do you put the PDA? There is no third hand. So I mean, we decided not to use a PDA to augment the document, and we said it should all be by voice augmentation. So they had an earpiece, and then you could choose things and get feedback via voice feedback. Now, of course, this is also a limitation because you cannot give so much information via a voice channel. I mean, it's quite limited here, the amount of information you can give back. Now, here is a very interesting project. I think it was also presented at CHI by Song et al., the mouse light prototype. Now, what's the idea? The idea is again that we use some kind of Pico projectors. We have the pen, so the system knows where the pen is. And here in the prototype, we use 2 other pens to actually know where the projector is. And then you can really, while you're interacting with the system, you can project or augment the paper with the Pico projector. Now, of course, the idea or the final, that's just a prototype. In the future, the idea would be that the projector is integrated into the pen. Of course, that would be perfect. Then you could just have your pen that can be used to write and capture information, and at the same time, it could just project a small image around the pen nib. Another thing, I said you can also start to mix things, so that's something we did, or our partners in the Paperworks projects did in 2007. Maybe you heard about printed electronics and things like that. So what you can nowadays do is you can really print with specific polymers, you can print electronics on paper. And that was the idea here. So we have here, the lower part is actually a normal paper document with this Anota pattern. And here you can see it's a bit bluish. So this is a kind of an overlay print with these polymers, which means then that you can actually, this thing can change color if you program it via this wire at the moment. Of course, the optimal thing would be if it's wireless. But this is still a very paper-like thing because only this part is somehow has a bit of kind of a plastic feeling. The rest is regular paper, and you can start to create these 2 types of systems. So it's like taking the ebook thing and merging or melting it with the paper interface. I think I will skip the authoring and maybe come immediately to the conclusions. So what did I try to present to you today? I mean, there are various approaches for interactive paper and paper computing. So a lot of different systems for the pen stuff, but as we've seen today, even more approaches to augment paper in a more general way. And the question is somehow whether we are maybe missing some common abstraction layers. So, I mean, everybody builds his own system with some specific features, but maybe there are some things that are common to all these systems, and we could maybe start to think about that and come up with a more general infrastructure that could then be used by all the other frameworks. So it might be the right time to think about the integration of existing solutions and share efforts. And of course, one way to do this is like today, to have this kind of cross-disciplinary workshops like PaperComp. There was also a COPAD workshop in the past with a similar audience. Or maybe that's maybe also something to be discussed later today. I mean, there are also other instruments like from the European Union, this kind of network of excellence, where the idea is exactly to support these kind of actions where you have people with a specific expertise and they want to come together, start to share knowledge and maybe build something new or just exchange information in workshops. So yeah, that's all from my side. Sorry that there was no new application, but I hope it was still a little bit interesting to see what we did in the past and to get some ideas about future developments on interactive paper systems.
Thank you very much.